One thing that affects us every day is the Earth, and it's something we really can learn from. The Earth has evolved over the last 4 billion years, and this tells us a story about evolution. A story that can teach us how we will evolve ourselves. According to the Danish author Martinus, the Earth is more evolved or developed than we are as human beings. So we can learn about our future by looking at the evolution of the Earth and where it is right now. So in this video we look into what answers the Earth can give us to our own future by looking at the balance between light and darkness. And the key here is that we both need the light and darkness. That in order to have a colorful piece of art as the Earth is, we both need the light and the darkness. And that goes both for the physical part, where it's fairly obvious that we cannot just have light or only darkness. We need both of them. But we'll also go into what it means for us mentally, because we also need the light and the darkness there. If you find the video interesting or valuable, please like it and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate that, and it helps the channel quite a lot. So what do we know about the universe? How did it evolve? I'll take the departure in what the Danish author Martinus says about it. He has his knowledge from intuition, so it's not really based on the science that we find in physics and astronomy and so forth, but it's what he says. I don't know how much in compliance these two are, but I will take the departure in his version of it. And I don't think it's that controversial because he's just talking very generally. So what he states is that the universe pretty much started out as fog, and this fog later become heat, and that heat over time become mass. And that's where we know the normal signs that we have stars and so forth. And he says that the mass later became what we know as suns. That's the stars, so that's in compliance with the physics. If we look at a sun, it's all light, so it doesn't have a lot of details. We know there are some shadows, and these are called sunspots. So in the beginning, the suns are all light and does not have many details. When we see pictures of the sun, there are some shadows on the sun, but it's really weak. And we might even see some sunspots, and we see these explosions that goes out from the sun. But generally, the sun is very light and without a lot of details. And due to all the lights, the sun is not the greatest piece of art because it lacks details. So the sun is not as beautiful as a flower because it simply lacks details. And this is where we start to talk about light and darkness, that we don't just need the light, but we also need the darkness. So we got the suns, but the creation of the universe continues. And this is where we find the Earth starting to appear. In the beginning, it's just a dark planet with volcanoes and lava. The Earth started to cool a bit more down and become a dark planet. So now we have a planet that is in darkness, which is not a particularly great piece of art either, because it lacks the light nuances. So now we have two different versions. We have the sun with a lot of light, or too much light, and we have the Earth in its early days with too little light and too much darkness. So both of them do not have a lot of details. So what we saw on Earth was that the dark planet became lighter. It got more detail. So in order to make the Earth greater, it needed a mix of light and darkness, not just the darkness. That meant having plants on the Earth. The plant gave the Earth color, and color is a mix of light and darkness. So basically the Earth became more beautiful with the colors. The volcanoes and lavas turned cold and allowed the Earth for beautification. We can still find the black spots on the Earth today, and we can actually see the difference in beauty. Of course, a lava desert has its own beauty in some ways, but it's not like a green field. So what does this show us? It shows us that a deserted environment is not as loving as a non-deserted environment. And it also tells us something about ourselves. And what is that? Our mentality has light and darkness as well. We can have a light mentality where we have too much light and it is not a piece of art to the extent it can be. And the same goes with a dark mentality where we also lack the beauty and the details as we saw in the physical environment. So let's get into what it means to have too much light in our mentality and too much darkness. And especially having too much light in our mentality might be a little bit strange. So too much light makes us too kind in a way. And it can be exemplified by setting boundaries for children, for instance. If you don't set boundaries for children, they will become spoiled, they will become misbehaved, and essentially they will become a burden for other people. So in the short term, you might feel like you help people in some ways or help the children in some ways by not saying you cannot do this or that. Of course, I'm not talking about not giving the children freedom or anything. I'm just saying there are things that they should not be doing, how they treat other people and so forth. They should be told to some extent in a kind way that they should not do that. Parents that let the children do whatever they want essentially are too good in some ways, or have too much light in their mentality is probably a better way to say it. So the children basically become a problem for themselves and their surroundings because it lacks logic, basically, the way the parents are behaving. So too much light means that you are too kind, basically. You don't set boundaries for other people, maybe even yourself. And the dark part, if you have too much dark, that is more known, more obvious, that result in hate, bitterness, so forth, where we are angry at other people, and we see that result in wars and other unpleasant relations between people. So too much light is where we don't set our foot down basically and say this is not okay, and we can do that without all the darkness in it. We can just say that won't work. And the other side of it, the darkness part, is basically where we lack the kindness, where it becomes really just hate, bitterness, and those kind of things, where we'll have a dark mentality. So what will be the colorful mentality? What will be the equivalent to the earth we have right now? The colored mentality creates real love among people. It results in real kindness. It is intellectualized. That means it's logical. So when you are kind to a child or some other person or another living being, that kindness is still warm. It has the feeling, it has the understanding, but it's logical. So you don't say yes to things that will eventually lead that person into trouble down the road. So what we learn from the development of the earth is where we are going with our mentality. We as human beings still have two light areas and two dark areas. So what we can learn from the development of earth is where we are going with our own mentality. We still have two light areas and two dark areas, but we also get more and more colorful areas in our mentalities. These are the areas of our personality where we have the light and dark in balance. Martinus tells us that our whole mentality will become as the earth surface with colorful plants. It will become a true piece of art that will be a blessing for our surroundings. We are not a complete blessing for our surroundings today. We get into fights either physically or mentally. We are not always a blessing in the short term, at least. So the earth physical surface shows us what our mentality will become, what we are heading towards. We'll go from being partly a blessing, partly a pain, to become a complete blessing for our surroundings. We will know what the best thing to do is. And sometimes we have to choose between two things where both of them are not great, a complete blessing. But then Martinus says, when we have that situation, let's say one of them is 70% colorful and the other one is 30% colorful, then we should choose the lesser evil. And in this case, the 70% colorful or loving or blessing part of the behavior we will have is better than only 30%. And we live in a situation where we will continuously get into situations where none of the things that we can do are perfect, in the sense that it's completely a good thing for us. But then we have to choose what is the best or most loving way to live life. So what tells us that Earth has become a blessing? Well, we can see that we get food, we get a climate. Well, there are some issues sometimes, but we do have a climate where we can live in, and there's so little that has to change in our climate so we cannot live here anymore. But basically, we got all we need to have a convenient life on Earth. We just don't know exactly how to take advantage of that convenience that we actually get. But that's a different story for another video. All this is provided to us by Earth. So this is an example for us on how to be a blessing. We need to learn what is right and wrong in order to be a blessing for our surroundings. It takes time to learn this, and will only slowly evolve over time. But the main point here is that this is the journey we are on. There's a lot more to that, but that is for future videos. This was mainly to open up for the idea that our development as living beings is heading in a certain direction, and that nature shows us that direction already exists. We just have to learn it, and that takes practice, it takes experience, and it might even take some study of how to do things. This practice takes a long time, and Martinus also has the notion of reincarnation, so this is not something we can learn in one life, maybe not even 2, 3, or 4, who knows how long it's gonna take, it depends on where we already are. But we will learn over time. And nature shows us that it's possible to a much larger scale than we are. Earth is much bigger than us. You can also look at the solar system. I mean, we have the sun in the center, and we have the Earth in a specific distance from the sun, so we can actually live here. If it was just a tiny bit closer to the sun, or a bit further, we wouldn't be able to live here as physical beings. And that's what we have to learn. We need to understand that the kindness we have to give for other people has to be logical, and we cannot go after people, be angry, bitter, and so forth. We have to find that balance. That's where our life also become an art, as the Earth is right now. So with these words, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you find it valuable, please like it and subscribe to the channel to follow what is going on here. And leave comments and questions below if you have any, and I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks for watching.